Welcome to the Alternatives Mason podcast. With host Brittany Mason, Chief of Staff at Banrion Capital Management, you'll learn how to build alternatives knowledge brick by brick. Banrion Capital Management uses technology to help independent advisors scale and educate themselves on alternative investments. And since education is such a big piece of what we do, we are excited to kick off the series to dive into the nits and grits of the alternative space.
Hello, everyone. It is Brittany Mason, your host here at Alternative Mason, coming at you once again with another episode. We are so excited to introduce you to Jeff Thomas, a very special guest of ours. He is the National Director at Swan Global Investments, and he's transitioned from a fourth-generation lobster fisherman to a financial advisor. Drawing from his early entrepreneurial experiences and market insights, in addition to his leadership role at Swan Global Investments, he is also the creator and host of the renowned investment Masterminds podcast series, facilitating discussions on various financial topics, notably alternative investments, of course. Jeff is an active advocate for diversity and equality in the financial sector, contributing as a mentor to the FinServe Foundation and holding a leadership position at Females in Finance. He also resides in Boston, Massachusetts with his family. Thank you so much, Jeff, for coming on today. Very excited to have you.
Yeah, excited to be here. Thanks for having me on the show today. I really appreciate it.
So you have a very interesting background, from any guest that I've had on here. And I really want to dig deep into your background and your journey on becoming a financial advisor, because it sounds like, you had a very different path at first.
Yeah, and when I interview guests on my show, I often ask that question too, because it turns out like a lot of people have these different stories, right, Brittany? I mean, it's not like there's not too many people out there, I think, that are like 4 or 5 years old and they're going into preschool saying, hey, I really want to be a financial advisor when I grow up, right? It's not something that you typically hear from children, right? And that wasn't the case for me either. So we all have these kind of stories, and that's what I love about these type of podcasts or web series is that we hear those stories, right? We share those stories, and that collective story is really part of what makes not only this country great, but this industry great, right? It allows people that may come from various backgrounds become very successful and spread that success to other people as well. So yeah, my origin story is kind of the American story. My dad is a third generation lobster fisherman in the small town of Hull, Massachusetts, like Hull, like the hull of a lobster boat. Actually named after Hull, England, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, I started working on the boats when I was about 12 years old, and would do that. My dad would pay me $10 to go out for the day on the weekends.
So you did get paid for that, all right?
I did, and you get extra money too here and there. Like if the boat got caught up in some ropes. If I was willing to dive off the boat with a knife in my my mouth and cut off the rope, it'd give me an extra $10. So you really learned how to make a living pretty quickly there. But I also learned about different things, like we talk about alternatives, right? Mm-hmm. You don't think of lobster prices as an alternative, but think about spot lobster prices, the price of bait, the price of a box of bait, price of diesel fuel, of gasoline for shipping lobster from one location to another. Prices of distributors, trying to find arbitrage by going to one restaurant versus another to get an extra 25 cents for the price of lobster, those type of things. So all that business acumen that comes with the territory of owning your own business certainly applies to lobster fishermen. And when I decided to take off my lobster boots, I decided on financial services for a couple of reasons. I mean, it was back in 1999, and it seemed like everybody was making money in the market in late 1999, and became a financial advisor. Very close, the closest place that would hire me to my house, because I didn't have a car at the time, and that's how I got into financial services. So.
Wow. So how old were you at the time then? And I mean, what struck your first interest though with financial services? I mean,
yeah, so that's a good question. So I was actually, I played ice hockey growing up. I still play ice hockey, men's league ice hockey. And, I didn't think that I was going to do anything but probably work on the lobster boat, right? It wasn't something that I thought that I didn't have the confidence. my father's story is a little different. His dad actually perished at sea before I was
Mm,
born. He was working the boats and got caught up in the lines.
it's really
And
dangerous. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, so that was, that was tough for him to make the decision to allow us to even be on the boats in the first place. And not that, I mean, when you're in your 20s, you don't care. You're not scared about
Yeah.
that type of stuff. But he really encouraged me to get a college education. And I played ice hockey, which helped to keep me very focused because I wasn't the best student in the world. It's not that I wasn't intelligent, but I had a little bit of an ADD issue, and as does my son. And it's funny seeing the next generation and how he's working through some of those issues.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he had to come from this life of scarcity. His mom left when he was 17, took the youngest kids and moved across the country to try to make her own life. And the other 5 kids had to kind of fend for themselves. And so he learned the tough lessons very early that I was able to kind of take. And in 1999, I got an offer from the well, in 1994, I went to college, and I got an offer for an athletic scholarship, or it's actually an academic scholarship to Nichols College through the hockey coach, basically. And so I'm going to this college, Nichols College, that is very known for business. And I really didn't think I was going to be in financial services, but I had many mentors along the way. So one of my teachers, he was actually a marketing professor who actually had worked for Pfizer for a couple of decades. He was the only professor that didn't have like a doctorate, right? He was just this real life, hands-on professor that everybody hated. They're like, don't get Downs. He's the toughest professor. You don't want him. Oh, you got him, you're done. And I had to keep a 3.0 every semester to make sure I kept my scholarship. So I was like, oh no, I got Downs. He's gonna fail me for sure. And best teacher I ever had. He just
Wow.
kind of, we connected. He saw something in me that I didn't see in myself.
Yeah.
It got me into all these different things like the Mu Capital National Marketing Honor Society, and just saw a lot of potential in me that I never saw in myself. And when I graduated college, I was working on the boats for about 6 months, and I was still deciding what I wanted to do. And a friend of mine who had been working at Fidelity and working her way through college was telling me like how hard she's working. She's trying to get her degree, and she's just trying to work her way up through the system without having that degree and all these things. I'm like, oh, a degree. I got one of those. I should do something with that. Right. And so that's how it came together with financial services. I was working on my dad's boat. I didn't have a car. I wanted to use my education for something. I went onto monster.com in 1999.
I remember monster.com.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're probably too young to know what monster.com is.
No,
but
I remember some of those commercials.
yeah, they were good. I mean, I 1999 was such a good job market. I was very fortunate, right? If it was 2000, maybe I would be doing something else right now, but I got like 22 offers to come in for interviews. I'm like, who wants to talk to me? I have zero experience. I just worked on a boat. I play hockey. I deliver pizza at night. Like, what am I going to do in financial services? So I got a job with MetLife Financial.
Wow.
I was using my dad's old beat up F-150 to get back and forth. Smelled like a old bucket of fish, and started to learn the business from scratch.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, so you didn't grow up learning about financial skills per se, just more of an entrepreneurial type of environment. That was more of what it was. I always find it interesting, the journey that we all have. For me, going into finance was very different. I talk about that a lot on here. Totally different backgrounds. And so I just moved over to this industry just a few years ago, during the pandemic, and kind of reinvented myself away from, the entertainment and fashion industry that I was involved with for 20 years before. But, I think it's really important to be open-minded and just keep evolving. And I think it's really awesome that you just went into something totally different. So what kind of skills are you passing on to your children now? I know you're a father, and what type of skills are you teaching yours?
That's a great question. I'm trying to, it's very difficult to teach children, I think, especially at a young age. They're 8 and 6 years old, the value of a dollar, and I feel like my parents' generation spent so much time trying to prove that they weren't poor. right? That tried to show that they weren't poor, whatever, they want to make sure that that people knew that they were doing well. And I'm trying to teach my children that we're not affluent, that we don't have unlimited resources. So it's almost like the opposite of that, right? Like they think that everything can come quickly and tomorrow if they need it because of the Amazon society we've
Right.
created and
Yes.
subscribed to, right? So
Instant gratification. Everything's instant now. Yeah.
right. So and so I worry about that. So I really am trying to teach them to, number one, lead with kindness, always lead with kindness, no matter what. I mean, hey, we all have backgrounds. I had some, rough times when I was younger, gotten a lot of scraps, had anger issues, just a lot of stuff that goes back, not just with me, but probably 20 generations in my family. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, we have
We
a lot
pass
of us.
these things down. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So it's like, how do you break that chain? Right. How do you break that
That
chain?
generational trauma.
Yep. And try to, like I said, my dad had barely any mentorship, being, on his own from the time he was 16 years old, and having that happen to him and trying to figure it all out. And he did an awesome job, trying to do the best he could, working two jobs, and as a fisherman and a firefighter. And I mean, he would go out at night to the fire department, trade off his boots, his firefighter boots for fishing boots during the day, and then go back at night again, when we would put the boat away. And so, and he still found time to like coach hockey and teach me how to play baseball and ride a bike and all those things. Right.
Yeah.
And so I'm just trying to teach my children to number one, continue to break that chain of not being kind, right? Always be kind, lead together, collaboration. And especially in this industry, when I started, Brittany, in the 1990s, it was that whole Wolf of Wall Street mentality.
Yeah.
Right? Which I subscribe to. I'm not going to lie to you. I did. I just, I like I said, I played sports. You're in a locker room with a bunch of guys. You're excluding women. Women are excluded from a lot of those conversations anyway. And then you get into an industry which is very much male dominated, and we're on a sales desk, and it's 90% men, right? Or boys, really. We're in our 20s, and it's that boys club thing. And it did annoy me, though. It really did. The whole alpha male thing, everybody fighting over it and everything else, and it just really annoyed me at times. But I did subscribe to it too.
Yeah.
So I want to teach them that you don't have to do that, especially my son. My daughter, I'm not as worried about yet, right? Because she's 6, and I think we'll have the worrisome times with her when she's 13, 14, as my wife will tell me. But she's just a sweetheart. So she leads with kindness. She is great at supporting her brother and really just trying to be good to each other, which is great, and make sure they're open and going out and doing different things, which we encourage all the time.
Yes. And I know that's awesome. It's so important, and especially as a girl dad, to teach our daughters how to navigate in this world. So, and on that subject, you are a big supporter of diversity and females in finance. I want to learn more about your role there.
Yeah. So it was funny, it's sometimes what's good for society is also good for business, right? And so I don't want to try to pretend that I've always been this rah, hey, look at me, I'm a male feminist or whatever else, right? I'm just someone that's trying to evolve. I'm trying to evolve, and I'm trying to be a better person for not only me, but for my wife, for my son, and for my daughter. And I want to see this industry do better, right? I want us to all do better. And I learned, in that boys club mentality, it's how can I look better than the next guy? How can I look better than that? And I say guy because they were all guys. They didn't. If you had a big win, everybody was jealous or angry, right? And I'm sure you saw this in the fashion industry, right? That whole, that kind of petty attitude of, hey, I need that person to fail for me to do well, right? And so,
don't get me started on model apartments. They stuff you all in there. There's like seven of you, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and you're all going out on the same castings for the same job. So
I mean, that's a much better
totally
show.
cutthroat.
Yes. All right. So when you come on, you'll come on my show and you can talk about that. All right. We'll do a reverse.
Dynamic. Yeah. It's survival of the fittest. Definitely a Wolf of Wall Street, but in a different way.
100%. So, yeah, so that environment is very, very difficult to for people of different diverse backgrounds to excel and all those type of things. So I realized that it's good for business in financial services and financial advisory firms to have a better diverse lineup of different professionals, not just because it's the right thing to do, but it's also the right thing for clients, because your clients are going to be from diverse backgrounds, right? I've had advisors say that they don't really speak to the women in a conversation. They've openly said that they would rather have them by the window and look out the window and those type of things. And I think that's a mistake in, not to tell anybody how to do their business, but I think that can be a big mistake, not only from a personal level, but also the fact that now when that person is probably going to be a widow at some point by the average in statistics, and could be, having another 20 years without a husband. Now they're going to another advisor. 70% of widows actually go to another advisor after their husband dies. And that's because, a lot of these firms are so male centric that they haven't realized that they have totally ignored the other side of the equation. So that's a long story to tell you. I met Cheryl Hickerson. Cheryl is the founder of Females in Finance. I met her at a Carson Excel conference in Las Vegas, by the way.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, at the what was it? The Cosmopolitan. We had it at the Cosmo. Yeah. So
That's my favorite. It's one of my favorite hotels in Vegas.
yeah, it's a great spot. Yeah. So we had a booth. We were booth mates. She had a booth next to mine, and I noticed that all the other asset managers would come around, and mostly male, and they would come and they would ignore Cheryl. She's just a woman in her 50s. She just kind of doing her thing over there, and she's got a great photo of her program and stuff, just as Females Finance. Nobody would stop, ask her a question. They just all walked by. What I did notice is every one of the clients and advisors that stopped by her booth were giving her hugs. Right? They're saying, "How you doing? Great to see you," and all these type of things. So I started talking to her, and I just say, I said, what do you do at Females in Finance? What is this? She told me about the program. It's just a network of individuals trying to help women exceed in financial services and have a better share of not just more women in financial services. There are plenty of, believe it or not, there are more than 50% of the industry is actually women. Over 50% of financial services is made up of women. It's the positions of power where they are absent. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, think of the typical, 1990s, early 2000s firm. It's going to be, a male financial advisor, and he's got a staff of several women that are helping him with the admin, right? And paid, not a lot of money. Right. So how do we bring and sponsor those type of firms to bring up that next generation, so that they are also part of that equation to be in the decision-making roles in financial services? I've seen, very recently, there's a great firm called Bain Wealth Management. I don't know if that's the real name, but it's Mark Bain out in the Portland area of Oregon, and he's one of his client consultants. She's been with the firm for like 20 years, and he encouraged her to go and take the next step and become a financial advisor. She never thought she would do that, and she's killing it, right? And she's loving it. So those type of stories where you're being a sponsor within your own business, or you're going outside your business to bring on a more diverse network of people to help succeed together. And by the way, you're doing the right thing by doing that as well.
So what do you feel is the best way that we can uplift women then in the financial world? What kind of advice would you say to men specifically on how they can help uplift women?
Yeah, Brittany, I wish I had a secret sauce where I could say, hey, this is how we should speak, talk, do those things, right? First of all, just do the right thing in the first place, and we'll all kind of end up okay. But I think sponsorship as opposed to just mentorship is important. So mentorship is something, and I've done a lot of work with FinServe Foundation. Dr. Julie Ragotz, she talks about sponsorship versus mentorship quite a bit. The mentoring is when you're kind of talking to someone and telling them how to do things, right? Like, hey, this is how I did it. This is how you could do it. Hey, try this, some of those type of things. Sponsorship is when you actually take that person and put them in front of someone else and say, and put yourself out there, right? And say, hey, I'm willing to step up and say, hey, I can really vouch for this individual. I think that she would be a great piece of your overall team and can work her way up the ladder. So sponsorship is definitely a big way that men can be allies to women in this business. And don't get me wrong, women don't necessarily need men in the business to be successful. There are plenty of women that have had no interjection or help. But if you listen to Cheryl Hickerson at Females in Finance, and I was on a web podcast with her yesterday, and she said she did a survey of over 4,000 successful financial advisors, women financial advisors in the industry. And not only financial advisors, but fintech and different types of areas. And as part of the survey, she asked if you had any type of male mentorship in your progress through becoming successful, and 100% of those came back and said yes. So being a sponsor and advocate, also helping with the younger generation, like FinServe Foundation does, run by Jamie Hopkins, who's the CEO of Bryn Mawr Capital.
We love Jamie. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's done a great job of that program, but there's only so much that program can do on its own. Mm-hmm. Another great advocate for women, David Wood out of Gateway Partners, is part of LPL. He's got 170 advisors under him, but he's put 450 young people through his internship program over the last 20 years. And he has a very strong focus on gender equality and diversity. So, I mean, it's tough, because when, like, it's Swan Global Investments, who I work through, who sponsors my investment masterminds program. We're a small shop, and I'm based in Boston, but we're based in Durango, Colorado. So when we're doing some of these searches, and I'm not a hiring manager, but when we're doing some of these searches to try to bring in more women into financial services in those roles, in these little pockets, it's not as easy. We had I think 100 applicants and only 2 were women, And so I said, after that last hiring we did, and I was slightly involved in it, I said, well, we have to do a better job of doing specific outreach and really finding more diverse voices within our own company, right? Here I am trying to do all this work with like Females in Finance and FinServe Foundation, and within Swan, we haven't done a great job. It's not, and I don't blame the company for that. It's because we're in a spot where we usually will reach out to either through recruiters or through just the traditional channels. And what we're getting is this just overwhelming response of men interviewing. And it's just a small segment of women that they don't have a shot. So if we reverse engineer that, and we actually, LinkedIn's a great way you can do that. You can go through, and I started to do this to prep for the next time we're hiring, is to really keep an eye on those young professionals that are coming up and putting out great content and great ideas and having great attitudes. And those are the people I want to bring on going forward. So I know that's a longer answer to a short question, but I think it is multifaceted. It isn't just an attitude change. It's not about, telling other guys that they have to behave better at conferences and those type of things. That's all part of the overall equation. You really have to put yourself out there and be a sponsor and be willing to put that sponsorship out there for people to really succeed.
More about the outreach. We need more outreach, more action. Yeah.
And younger. So FinServe is great at that. So I'd love to help FinServe just like expand, into every college in the country, because they go to colleges. It was Dr. Julie doing it by herself, like going to all these colleges and advocating for more diversity and Carson does wealth management does an awesome job at this. They pay for 50, 60, along with FinServe, pay for all these kids to come in to all these conferences and be exposed to these great things from these backgrounds.
That's what we need.
So awesome.
Because someone that's not taught in schools. Although I did actually see I did read, I think it was about a month or 2 ago, I did read that they're going to start rolling out a mandatory financial course in public schools in the US.
That's
in
awesome.
and I think in several places. Yeah, it's so important. It needs to be 100% in every school.
Yeah, I've had recent guests on, like Johannes Harrison, who's the podcast host of the Money Script podcast, and also an RIA. A lot of these stories, and similar to Jamie Hopkins' stories, a lot of these stories come from true scarcity, like single dad, bankrupt, all those type of things. And so there's only a small percentage of people that actually take that experience and are able to turn that around into something that they say, hey, I want to make sure that I can change this for the next generation. Not everybody's able to do that. I mean, it takes a very specific equation of entrepreneurship, drive, and luck. You know, there's such a big part of luck that goes on in life. And if we can take the luck out of the equation and help those people that want to be helped to be brought along in any way possible, that's where we start to see real change. And we have been seeing change. You know, it's slow, but we have been seeing change in this industry in a positive way.
Yes, I believe so. So tell us more about Swan Global. I want to hear more about what you're doing with Swan Global.
Oh, thanks so much. Thanks for asking. Great company. I started working with them on the West Coast in 2017. So I know this is the alternatives Mason. So we'll talk a little bit about the alternative side, because when I started in the industry, remember, it was 1999 as a financial advisor. And traditional portfolios, we just did cookie cutter 60-40, 70-30 type of portfolios. Nobody even wanted those. Everybody wanted the 80-20. I mean, I remember someone coming in asking me if they could buy the NASDAQ with a loan on a credit card, and that the credit card loan was 22%, but they thought they were going to make 60% on that, right? So they were like, oh, that's fine. And I was actually stupid enough to ask my manager if they could do that, and he didn't even know. That's how ignorant we were of how the market was going.
Wow.
So I saw, luckily I wasn't a great financial advisor in 99. So it's not like I brought in that much money, but I did feel pretty bad about the money I did bring in, because, there were so many portfolios that should have been probably much more conservative than they were. And so that gave me this kind of this tendency towards risk mitigation, right? This risk management piece. And so it kind of goes in hand when you think about alternatives of different ways you can diversify portfolios and protect and mitigate risk, right? That's a big part of it. I've asked Shana Sissel on my program, what is an alternative investment, right? So then that's kind of like, the question about how do we make the world better and more diverse? It's not just one answer.
Mm-hmm.
Alternatives can mean so many different things. It's almost like saying, I manage equities, right? Well, what does that mean? Is it small cap? Is it mid cap? Is it international? Is it emerging markets? What are you doing, right? And same with alternatives. So unfortunately, they may all get put in the same bucket, right? So, and sometimes people will think of alternatives as automatically adding risk to the equation, which isn't what I see as alternatives, or at least the use case that we do within Swan and with my network of alternative experts that I work with. So we're trying to bring diversification to portfolios. And I think the biggest problem we've had over the last 70 years since modern portfolio theory was created in 1952 is that, well, now modern portfolio theory is brilliant as Harry Markowitz was, it's no longer modern, and we see that when you have these large moves in the market, what happens? Everything kind of moves together now, right? Mm-hmm. So how do you get different pieces of a portfolio that actually give you diversification to get a smoother ride? And that's where alternatives comes into the picture. So at Swan, we do it through options, right? So our primary vehicle for risk mitigation is buying a put option, which is basically a mitigating vehicle to help offset losses in the portfolio and get a more consistent return over time is the goal of those type of portfolios. So that's
I was just going to say, what are some of your favorite alternatives, and how do you see that space evolving?
So like in the early 2000s, I worked a lot with more commodities types, which at that time were considered more alternatives, like gold strategies and those type of things. I worked with Jeremy Grantham's team at GMO, which was more kind of long short type of strategies, which have been considered in that space. I do love the use of options because it's really about outcomes and trying to create outcomes for clients. So I think sometimes we get too much in our own heads when we think about either traditional, non-conventional, alternative investments to say, all right, what does it do? What does it do? What does it do? Well, what is it supposed to provide? What does the client need, right? And so I like the use of options, obviously, and I work for Swan Investments, who are options experts, so it's easy for me to say that because we're outcomes driven. We look at what the client needs and try to get them there through a portfolio and try to get more, at least attempt to get more predictable results over time. So I do like options as a vehicle to be able to do that. But even in the options universe, that's very diverse, so you want to make sure you have options that are very liquid. You don't want to be using kind of esoteric options on very small cap positions that could have a lot of volatility or liquidity risk and those type of things. So you really want to work with someone that knows what they're talking about within the option space to be able to do that. Yeah, I've had conversations with other people on my show that I know that have worked with Banrion Capital, right? So, which, I know that you're affiliated with Banrion. Cormac Kinney with Diamond Standard, really cool conversation there. I love those kind of ideas of, different ways to bring diversification, whether through traditional commodities or other ways. I'm a bigger fan of liquid options than I am, or liquid alternatives than non-liquid alternatives, because, I believe that the everyday person, I just think that they don't have the ability to handle as much risk as maybe like a high net worth individual that can take a 10% chunk, and if it doesn't work out, it's okay, right?
Yeah.
A lot of our clients need that money, and that's why we are more conservative on that side.
Let's talk hedged equity. So what is the significance of hedged equity in today's market?
Well, that's yet to be told, right? So hedged equity is great in two ways, right? It will give you directional performance. So if you are taking, let's say, a market like the S&P 500, very simply, and you're just hedging out some of the risk using a put option, it just depends on how much of that put option you want to have on and how close to the money you want to have it on. But you can hedge out some of the larger loss risk, right? One way you could do it is just through a simple strategy that buys a put option to protect the asset, and that helps to add something that's similar to insurance, but you can't call it insurance. It's not. It's very similar in how it works, but it's not actually an insurance piece. So I just want to make that very clear. So that's kind of a traditional hedge. Buffered outcomes. So if you have a buffered ETF, that's another way that we've seen a lot of advisors and investors use those type of options based hedge type strategies, where they'll see an actual number. They'll say, all right, this portfolio over the next 12 months would expect to be down X if the market goes down a certain amount, and it could be up as much as this. So it kind of capture upside and downside. And some people like that defined outcome in that piece of the portfolio. So, I mean, hedged equity is just like anything else. I mean, you live in Vegas, right? I mean, think about, somebody goes to a casino and they put some money on black, they put some money on the double zeros, they put some money all over the board. They're kind of hedging their bets all over the place. The difference between the casino and the investor is that the client in the casino is almost guaranteed to lose, whereas the market almost always wins over time. So you're kind of the house in that bet, where you're the one that's actually have that tilted in your favor, right? So hedging is just like anything else in life. You've heard the term hedging your bets. You're just doing that within your portfolio to manage the risk and the volatility profile for your clients.
So that's one of the strategies that you'd say that you use the most, especially in a volatile market?
Yeah. So when you're questioning about what do you like about hedge equity and those type of things, it depends on where the market goes. Like in a 2008 scenario, 2008 financial crisis, when there's systematic risk, when we see correlations come to one and everything is drawing down, and there's that visceral feeling, and people are calling you as a financial advisor and saying, what should I do about my portfolio? We really haven't had that since 2008. I mean, 2020, we had COVID, but most people were more concerned about where they were getting toilet paper than they were their statements. And unfortunately, I heard some terrible stories about people that actually had to use their statements as toilet paper. We don't want to go there, but yeah. So, advisors weren't getting those calls. People were so concerned about their life and their health that they weren't getting calls from their clients to get me out of the market. Right. In 2008, that was a different story. When we started to see capitulation at the end of 2008, early 2009, that's when you see the bottom really drop out. And that's when option strategies really pick up. It's almost like owning flood insurance after a flood. And now everybody wants that insurance, and you can sell it off to the highest bidder to actually make a profit and monetize that process. So these large market moves is where option strategies can really help to add a lot of value. But the rest of the time, you're not just waiting for a bear market. Remember, if you're hedged equity, you're equity. Equity is the first piece. That's the bias of the portfolio. You want markets to go up over time. You're not a short portfolio. You're not an inverse portfolio. You're buying an equity, and you're just hedging out some of the risk of that to manage that portfolio over time.
So what about the technological advancements we've had as far as like digital assets go? How do you think that this is going to influence the industry overall?
Yeah, I mean, I think
Technology.
I
Yeah.
think digital assets are good I mean, they're not neither good nor evil, right? There's this whole thought that's kind of like the force versus the dark side in Star Wars, right? Like, oh, these are good, these are bad. I mean, yes, there should be regulations around them, and now that we've seen, those investments become somewhat blessed and being able to be added to ETFs
Yes.
for liquidity purposes, I think it's a piece of a portfolio that can help diversify. That's also a hedge against the risk of the U.S. dollar and of all the liquidity that we've seen go into the marketplace over the last 5, 6, 7 years. So I don't think it's a terrible thing that there's some competition, right? With the fiat currency, and that hopefully will keep our stewardship of the world currency in check and make sure that we're not just printing money without thinking about the consequences long term. Now, COVID was a very interesting scenario, and I don't want to say that the Fed did a bad or a good job. I think they have done a fantastic job of making sure that we've had avoided a recession, which is amazing. I never thought they would have been able to thread that needle. But the
Yeah.
question is, farther down the line, how does that play out? And I think having digital currencies as a competitor to the U.S. dollar can help to keep the Fed, keep the powers that be in check a little bit.
Very good. Very good. Very good. Well, is there anything you want to add or any insight you want to add towards
Yes,
before
I
we wrap
do.
it up?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have exciting news.
Yeah, tell me, give
Yes,
it
we have
to us.
exciting news. All right, so we've done primarily hedged equity in the past, but as part of that, we do option writing, right? So which is basically where we sell covered calls as part of what we do overall. So we actually have created a covered call strategy, and we've joined with a partner, an index provider, O-Shares Investments, which is CEO is Connor O'Brien, and the chairman of the company is Kevin O'Leary. So most people know Kevin O'Leary from
Of
Shark Tank.
course.
And so we'll be doing some work with them. So they're just the index provider. They get great high quality U.S. large cap screens that they work through, and they'll be providing the underlying equity exposure, because we're not equity experts, right? Swan Global Investments, we are options experts. So they'll run the equity side. We're going to write options and collect premium on top of that to get some what we're trying to attempt sustainable income over time and capital appreciation. So it's a great partnership of kind of like the Reese's peanut butter cup of taking a couple of great things, putting them together, and it tastes even better, right? That's what we're creating. And
Stronger together.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So and we'll be doing an event together on the 27th of February through a firm called Vetify, which used to be ETF Trends. So we'll be making that announcement, and that will be going out shortly. So we're very excited about that partnership and having an income strategy, because these hedged equity strategies are great in these directional markets. And then the income strategies are really good in the non-directional markets, right? Especially, those flat markets where the market's not doing much, 5, 6, 7%, those type of things. If you can get some additional income on top of that and get total return in excess of inflation, right? And that's when you're seeing some additional benefits. So it's another way you can diversify that overall pie using different alternatives through options.
Fantastic. Where do you feel is the best, where do you find your best information on to stay up to date on alternatives in the market, how it's evolving in that space?
Yeah, I would say the Alternative Masons podcast is probably the best way to go about that, Brittany. I would say that certainly is one
We
of them.
like to dig deep here.
Yeah, absolutely. I do follow Banrion Capital and Shayna Orsic Sissel and the work that she's doing.
The queen
Uh,
of all.
That's right, the queen of alternatives. And then I draw from everywhere.
Yeah.
I will look for. I have my subscriptions all on Forbes and Barron's and everything else. And I do my screens on alternatives, but I don't necessarily look at, when I think about Swan Global Investments, what we do over here. I just think we're just looking for outcomes that are helping clients succeed. So it's not like I'm going out there and looking for the best alternative, right? Or I'm even trying to compete with other alternative asset classes per se. It's just that options happen to be an alternative asset class in general, right? So it's kind of chicken and the egg. So I'm always just looking for great content and what direction the market's going, what type of strategies will do well or should do well in certain markets and are more efficient, as opposed to just trying to say, all right, I need to look at the alternatives universe, because that's not really what helps investors in my mind. Investors need help to get to their goals with the smoothest ride possible, so that when things get really rough, that they don't make mistakes emotionally. And that's what I believe alternatives can bring to the table.
Just an extra layer of protection and to diversify. And that's, yeah, thank you. You've been so insightful, Jeff. Thank you so much for coming on today and taking the time to chat with us.
Yeah, no problem. Anytime you want. And I certainly want to have you on investment masterminds as well, because I think that would be, it would be a great, I think, the financial side of fashion is very fascinating, right? I mean, that's a whole other industry that has ties to financial services. And I'm sure you have some, I just love hearing stories, right? And that's, I know that's what you're passionate about, hearing more of the background. When I do these type of things and people, what they remember about me is more the lobster stuff. They'll be like,
yes,
hey, I get more about the fishing boat, right?
Yeah, it's very memorable, because that I always ask, my guests, like how they got started. I want to know, because my journey was so different. And, I really want to encourage other people out there to, that maybe haven't considered, the financial service industry, be open to it, learn, educate yourself. And I think that we all need to have, knowledge in this field, no matter who you are. So, and I really want to encourage, especially, young kids, like we were talking about, becoming more educated and uplifting women specifically too. That's something I'm passionate about. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing all of that and with us. And I am definitely gonna check out more of what you guys are doing over at Females in Finance and all this cool stuff you have going on. So thank you.
I have some memberships to gift out as part of my partnership. And so I'm going to gift you a membership to the Females in Finance program.
That would make me so happy. I would love that. Thank you.
Of course, no problem.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening in. We are so excited. Thank you for another episode. And Jeff, we're just so grateful for you coming on today. Thank you, everyone. We will see you again next time right here live from the Green Couch.
The opinions expressed in this program are for general informational purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual or any specific security. It is only intended to provide education about the financial industry. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult your financial advisor prior to investing. Any past performance discussed during this program is no guarantee of future results. Any indices referenced for comparisons are unmanaged and cannot be invested into directly. As always, please remember, investing involves risk and possible loss of capital. Please seek advice from a licensed professional.